What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and the Joker's Wild DLC, created purely for the pleasure of yours truly, has dropped. Spoiler alert, I am the final boss of the Tier 3 Reckoning. Be ready for thorn, shotguns, and lots of shoulder charges. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Jokes aside, Season of the Drifter is upon us with GAMBIT Prime and Reckoning, the two new keystone activities. Thorn is in the database, and there is a metric fuck ton of awesome lore to explore. Let's go ahead and start with GAMBIT Prime. While it is way too early to say if this mode will have any staying power whatsoever, that will be largely based on whatever meta forms around it, and the way the game changes over the next few weeks as all these bonuses get unlocked, and how the community reacts to that. What I will say is I spent 4 hours playing GAMBIT Prime in a row. The most time I've ever consecutively spent in GAMBIT. And it was a fucking blast. I'm sure if you're watching the gameplay on the screen, you can tell exactly what I was doing, but I had a ton of fun playing an invader. Now, the caveat here is, of course, I was playing with other people, which is arguably the best and maybe really the only way to play this game type. Communication is key. And so is filling those roles, Reaper, Invader, Sentry, and Collector. Though I will say, games can really hinge on the competency of your Invader, to the point that I find the Invader role kind of over-prioritized. More so here than in traditional GAMBIT, where a lot of the time if you're lagging behind, a lot of time can be made up by simply melting the boss. In GAMBIT Prime, however, that's not how this works. Here, there's a simple but effective interplay between the Invader, the damage phases, and the boss that not only makes the game more intense and satisfying, but really carves out the importance of the Invader role. Let me explain. So, GAMBIT Prime consists of one round, more or less your average Crucible match's length. And like traditional GAMBIT, you kill ads, collect motes, deposit motes in the bank, and summon a primeval. You're still invading to deny motes, you're still summoning blockers, however, blockers now, if left unchecked, will start siphoning motes from your bank. This is also something invaders will be able to do once they've unlocked that tier 3 perk. It'll be interesting to see the interplay between that. I could theoretically see situations where the invader goes in and the other team doesn't have any motes, so what do? Well, they pop a defender bubble on the bank and just sit there for 20 seconds. Anyways, once the primeval is summoned, that's when GAMBIT really changes, going from your classic GAMBIT experience to the GAMBIT Prime experience. Instead of a boss that can be instantly melted, the boss will spawn with an invincibility shield, and 2 taken witches, envoys, will be spawned in seemingly random locations around the map. You have to kill these 2 witches, then a 3rd witch will spawn. Once you kill this witch, the primeval will lose their shield, and a pool of light will spawn. Standing in this pool of light exponentially increases your damage. You can still damage the primeval from outside the pool, but you're basically wasting ammo. This damage phase lasts for 30 seconds, then the pool of light disappears and the primeval gets their shield back. 2 more witches spawn in, and you rinse and repeat. There is a primeval slayer buff, and it stacks up to 5, so after your first 3 envoy phases, you're dealing max damage. It's during this phase that a really competent invader comes into play, and really becomes one of the most important players on the team. Over the first 4 hours I played, and the consecutive hours that I played after that, I played exclusively as an invader. During the mote phase of GAMBIT, I'd invade and I'd prioritize the players holding the most motes, as you should, and I would try to stop them or delay them from summoning their primeval. In this version of GAMBIT, if a group of people are hiding in a corner not doing anything, that's actually way more valuable in this version than it was in the classic version. But when both teams summon their primeval, that's when things get super interesting. So when you invade now during the primeval phase, disruption and distraction, getting that team to sit in the corner and hide for fear of death, it's almost as important as getting kills. For example, say you invade and you just can't kill someone. You never get a shot, or you spawn on the other side of the map, or they're all huddled in a corner crying. Well, what you can do and what you are doing is you're delaying them from killing their envoys, which means they can't summon their pool of light, which means they can't drop their primeval shield, which means it takes longer for them to get to the damage phase. Your presence can disrupt this 30-second damage phase. After all, no one's going to want to stand in one spot with a neon sign saying, hey, 4 free kills right here. And if you're not actively standing in the pool of light or passing through it, you're not doing much damage to the primeval. Also, most teams tend to be inclined to stop DPSing the boss during the invasion phase to try to either kill the invader or hide from the invader, meaning just your sheer presence has wasted their 30-second damage phase. And if you get kills while you're invading like you're supposed to, well, hey, icing on the cake. And this creates a lot of interesting player choices centered around the invasion mechanic. Do you as a team wait to kill your last envoy and hope that they invade before you kill it, so you can deal with the invader and then kill the envoy and then go to the damage phase? If you kill the envoy and you wind up getting invaded, well, there's some more choices presented here as well. Would you rather miss a damage phase or delay a damage phase and try to hide? Or engage the invader, possibly die and heal your primeval? If you die, now not only have you delayed or missed your damage phase, but you've healed your primeval. So it's these really interesting moment-to-moment gameplay choices that players are presented with that, unfortunately, will only be really appreciated when you're playing with a team. But it is this sort of depth and complexity that the original Gambit did not have. In this iteration of Gambit, one invasion, one kill during that invasion can be the difference between winning and losing. And that just proves how invaluable the distraction as a whole is. And if your invader is actively getting 2, 3, 4 kills an invasion, utterly disrupting the enemy team's ability to even play the game and do damage to the boss at all, let alone keep that damage done, it's amazing. I absolutely love the interlocking gameplay between a team, their ability to do damage to the primeval, versus the mechanics introduced to create a damage window, versus the invader's ability to stop those damage phases, and also heal the primeval. It's quite possibly one of the most satisfying and compelling gameplay loops introduced to Destiny. And with a competent invader on each team, the games get really intense. I had one game go to time where my team barely won by a hair's breadth of damage because the invasion and the counter invasions were just so well executed by both teams' invaders. Can this be one-sided and frustrating? Yes, probably more so than normal Gambit invasion, especially if your team doesn't have a good invader, or you're playing solo. But this version of Gambit is clearly all about teams and team composition and working together. So much so that they have armor designed to reward people for playing specific roles and excelling at them. One of the other ways that this game type really stresses roles and teamwork is by rewarding those roles. For example, anytime you invade and you successfully get a bunch of kills, you can get an invader synth. Sometimes, however, it won't just be a synth, it'll be a masterworked version of one of the new Gambit weapons. So if you're completing a role or a task, you're rewarded. For example, I killed an invader, which the game considers a sentinel task, and I was rewarded with a masterworked version of the Last Man Standing shotgun. Not a shotgun role I'm likely to use over my Mindbender's ambition, but cool nonetheless. I will say, however, with such an importance placed on team composition, maybe some sort of solo queue playlist for Gambit, or my preference, a ranked-based playlist for Gambit, that would match players with like win-loss ratios together. I feel like that would be a great addition to this, and the issues that come intrinsically with solo queue. And can we take a moment to talk about the new Alexandria Gambit map? I find this to currently be one of the best Gambit maps in the game, because, in my opinion, it's a map that actively works against the invader. Where other maps have high sniping locations, where it's relatively easy to see the whole map, and you can post up on there and you can take out your Queensbreaker and you can just kind of look in the general direction of people and kill them, or at least you could. This map really doesn't have that sort of vantage, and the areas where enemies spawn tend to be caves. So it's a large map, and if you spawn on one side of the map and the enemy team's on the other side of the map, that's a relatively long distance to cover. And you have a ticking timer. So yeah, while it's a map that does have one high central location that you could snipe from, what you're looking at is generally these really well covered caves. And if you spawn on one side of the map, and you have to run to the other side of the map and the other team's just hiding, well, your invasion might not be as successful as it could have been. So I think it's a really good map that's kind of counterintuitive to invading, but in my opinion, that should be kind of the point. Invading should be difficult, so having a map that is counterintuitive to that is great. In fact, I think more maps should be designed like that moving forward. The other part of this Gambit Prime package is a game mode called The Reckoning. Dun dun dun! Lightning crackle, lightning crackle, lightning crackle. And it's a game type that I'm fairly indifferent about right now. One, we haven't seen all 3 tiers, but what we have seen is far less interesting to me than GAMBIT Prime. Maybe that's only because it's week 1. That said, what I played leaves me feeling like this mode is a 1-round version of Prison of Elders, with a couple of extra steps. Kill the Taken, so that medium Taken bosses are summoned. Kill the medium Taken bosses, so that a big boss is summoned. Rinse and repeat. Sure, some of these Taken have some new mechanics, like one throws out the Night Stalker's tether, but... This mode itself seems fairly bog standard, and I don't see it being much more than what Prison of Elders was, though I really do hope to be wrong in that regard. And the only real negative that I see about this game type is that it's tied to GAMBIT Prime. If this thing had its own loot, say it was a new Challenge of the 9, with new loot, new weapons, new lore, not just something attached to GAMBIT, then I think there would be more here, there'd be more reason to play it. But with the gear being tied to GAMBIT and not its own gear, it's only as valuable as the quest for GAMBIT gear is. And once you've chased all of that gear, once you're satisfied with the gear you have, this mode, this tacked on thing, really has nothing to offer. Which is really a shame because this type of horde mode tends to have a lot of replayability if there's a reason to go in and play it. Not only that, but I imagine it's easier to put really cool things in something like a horde mode like this than it is to update GAMBIT again. But hey, it is a guaranteed way to farm the new GAMBIT armor sets, so there is that. However, like I said, your mileage will vary. So without getting into spoilers, I've read the bulk of the new lore that was added with Joker's Wild, and I gotta say, it's some of the best, most consistent Destiny lore that's been added in a long time. Forsaken, for example, added a lot of lore, but it went from hit to miss to, what the fuck are you doing, Bungie? There's twists, there's turns, there's surprises. I really felt myself drawn into reading this new lore. And I'm gonna be honest, there are entries in the new lore that I was reading and kind of retrospectively thinking about, and I'm like, yeah, if they wrote that poorly, if they executed poorly, I would have been quite annoyed, because it would have seemed like a retcon, it would have seemed like an ass pull, but here, it seems like they really brought out a lot of respect for the subject matter. And hey, I didn't see anything about Baby's first golden gun, so hey, there is that. And I'm gonna be realistic. After the most recent web lore, where they go back and they explain something that didn't really need to be explained, and it seemed like they realized halfway through their explanation that that explanation didn't make sense in the broader context of the universe, but they tried to explain that plot hole away with another plot hole, and it created this huge mess. Basically just displaying Bungie not only doubling down on a bad idea, but tripling down and asking for the dealer to hit them on 20. Yeah, the web lore was convoluted, so I was really worried about the lore going into Joker's Wild, but I found myself enjoying pretty much everything I've read so far. I mean, we're talking like fanboy squealing, so I'm not gonna get into it because I don't want to like get into spoilers, but let's just put it this way. The Thorn lore! Yes! Speaking of Thorn, here's where we get into some slight minor spoiler territory, because I'm going to talk about the Thorn quest, at least the Thorn quest on paper. So if you want to go into it blind, leave now, or forever hold your peace. And like always, stay frosty. Alright, anybody who doesn't want to be spoiled, I hope you're gone, because goddamn, man, another one of these quests. This sucks. So let me go ahead and outline kind of the basics of the quest. So you find Broken Thorn, okay? I don't know how you find it. You may get it from the Drifter, you may recover it from some place, okay? But you get a Broken Thorn. First, you have to talk to Banshee. Then you have to gather some Hydronic Essence. How do you do that? Well, you kill Warlocks in the Crucible, complete IO destination bounties, or complete Nightfall Strikes. According to the quest step, the fastest way to gain Hydronic Essence is by completing Nightfall Strikes. Next, you need Plasteel Plating. You get Plasteel Plating by completing Titan destination bounties, killing Titans in the Crucible, or completing Blind Well activities. The Heroic Blind Well offers the most Plasteel out of these activities, of course. Step 4, Sapphire Wire. complete Mars destination bounties, kill hunters in the Crucible, complete Escalation Protocol waves. And of course, the completion of Escalation Protocol waves is the best way to get Sapphire Wire. Next, you need to get kills in the Crucible, but there's a little bit of a caveat. You need to get void damage kills or hand cannon kills. Yes, you can use a void hand cannon for these kills to speed this up. It should be noted that playing in the competitive playlist or playing in Iron Banner gives extra progress. So if you take a void hand cannon into competitive, you're gonna make this go by a lot quicker. Then you go talk to Tyra Karn, and then you gotta go do a special version of the Savathûn Song Strike. Yay! You've gotta kill 2 unique enemies, then finish the strike. So basically, this is a seemingly less annoying version of the Last Word quest that has you going back through and playing old content over and over and over. I guess the bright side is, since the quest goes live on Tuesday with Reset, most people will be doing these activities anyways. I do sort of think that it's sad that these DLCs have kind of built up both of these weapons, and I mean Thorn in Joker's Wild is kind of the point. So seeing it not get the same sort of fanfare that Thunderlord got, don't get me wrong, Thunderlord is cool, but was it really worth bringing back a section of old Russia for this one quest? I mean, yeah, because it was cool, but this is just Thunderlord. This isn't Thorn or Last Word. So to not see Thorn or Last Word get the same kind of treatment, especially when Thorn and Last Word pretty much represent where the story of Destiny is going, that's really kind of disappointing. And I feel sort of robbed, I'm gonna be honest. Like, Thorn and Last Word, man, like, they deserve so much better. But hey, you know what? All in all, the Joker's Wild update is pretty good. They fixed a lot of the day one pains with Black Armory, and they created a Gambit experience that is actually enjoyable. At least for now. That said, I don't think it's really worth the asking price of the season pass. The largest piece of content, the change to the Gambit playlist, that should have been a quality of life update. Gambit sucked, fix it. There's no new raid, there's no new dungeon, there doesn't seem to be a sizable vendor update other than the Drifter, the change in the pinnacle weapons, and oh yeah, who can forget the cash shop. At best, this is a quality of life update that we paid for. So yes, while I have really enjoyed this update so far, with pretty much the sole exception of the new exotic armor being rather forgettable, there's just not much here, and I don't think it warrants the price tag. I think this is a quality of life update. Nothing more, nothing less. Gambit Prime is enjoyable. Everything else is just kinda alright. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. And like always, stay frosty.